Hello everyone. So today we are going to talk about data structures or structs. So before starting with data structures, so there is a way to just define another way of, let's say, saying ent. So here ent, let's say a. Okay. How we can change ent to any other identifier by using something which is called typedef. What is typedef? Typedef is just an alias or something to change the name from a certain name to another one. So for example, if I no more want to say about a ent, I can use another thing by using typedef and then ent and then let's say here ent Mohammed. So instead of declaring ents using ent, I will just use ent Mohammed and it will do the same thing. So after this line, I can go here and say ent Mohammed a, b, and then len. This means that a is an ent variable, b is an ent variable, len is an ent variable. The same thing for this array is array of all ent variables. Okay, so the way of using typedef is not confusing. It just changing the name you are using, and we will see what is the benefit of that when using structs. So now let's start with structs and let's see how we are going to deal with structs. So before starting, if you look here to this symbol that we will have all over the slides, you'll find that we have different lengths here and different shapes, right? This is just to tell you that structs are 100% different than arrays. If you remember, arrays are having the same type, right? So if ents, so all of them will be, all the elements here will be ents, right? Which not the case when we are dealing with data structures or structs. So as a definition, structs or data structures are a structure which is having a collection of related data items. What the meaning of collection of related data items? For example, your bank account. Your bank account is having your name, which is a string, is having your, let's say, ID, which is an ent, is having your balance, which is an ent, right? Is having your email, which is a string, and so on, right? So it's having different data types. So data structure is collecting different data types which are related, right, with each other. So the main difference between data structures and arrays that data structures are having heterogeneous or different data types inside it, but arrays are homogeneous data types, right? So inside arrays we only can have characters or ents or doubles. We can't have them mixed there, right? Which is the big advantage for data structures. So an example for that is the student record. So for example, we want to store the student ID with the name, with the major, with the gender, with the starting year. All of these, we want to group them with each other, right? This is for each student. We have to have all these information with each other. Okay, so this is why we are using structs. The same thing as I said before, the bank account or address book, which you have to have the name, address, telephone number, and so on. Okay, so each member or each element inside the struct. So for example, this, I will name it as member, this member, this member. So each one there, I will just name it as member, okay? And the members, as we said before, they can be different types, okay? At the same time, if you want to access any member, so for example, if I have a struct, which is my name, okay, my name, and then inside this struct is having two members, which is last and first. To access them, you have to write it in this way. The name of the struct dot last or the name of the struct dot first. This means that you can access the data stored in this element, okay? So how to declare a struct? There are two ways actually. The first way is just writing struct and then my struct, and then here these are the members, right? So we have here three members. One is ent member, one is a char member, and one is a char which is finally a string member, right? So we have here three members. And finally, if you want, until now, you didn't reserve anything in the memory. You're just defining a struct. Okay? To reserve in memory, I will write here struct, and then the identifier that I have here, which is this one, and then the name of your struct. And now here, this is the declaration of a struct variable. Okay, so this is one way to do it. And as you can see here, I'm using a struct and then my struct and then the variable name, right? So there's another way which is somehow simplifying this by using typedef. So if you compare both of this, you'll find I will start here by typedef, which I didn't start at the beginning. Okay, so here, if you see, I didn't use typedef. And then here I have my struct type. So this is, if you remember, ent Muhammad. This is very similar to ent Muhammad that I used in the beginning. Okay, so after that I will use just this one, which is my struct type, and then write directly the struct variable, which is this one. So comparing with the last one, you will find that here I have to rewrite the struct and then my struct and then the variable, but here the new type that I defined, I just have to write it and then declaring directly the variable there. And both of them are right, and whatever the way you want to write your struct, this is up to you. Use this one or this one, it's 100% up to you. So here's an example. For example, I have here a struct which is based on date, and inside it there are 3 members. The first one is day, the second one is month, the third one is year. And then here is another example, struct student info, and then inside it we have ent ID, ent age, and then char gender, and then double GPA. Okay, and another example, student grade, char name, so we have here a string, right? Char course, which is the course name, and again this is a string, ent lab, and then here this is an array, right? As you can see, if you look up here in the symbol, you can have inside the struct an array, right? As you can see, the 4 squares there. So I have here lab 5. This means that I have 5 grades for the lab. Let's say we have 5 labs over the semester, 3 homeworks over the semesters, and 2 exams over the semester, right? So finally we have 5 members, okay? And if you look here, you will find that all the members are arrays, and 2 of them actually are special character or special case of arrays, which are strings. This is another example for bank account, name, and then account number, and then balance, and finally date of birth. Okay, and remember, date here, it is already an struct, so you can have a struct inside a struct, and this is somehow complicated, but still it can be, right? Because I already have a struct which is called date, and the struct date actually is having inside it, if you remember from the slide, we have ent day, ent month, and year, right? So this means that inside a struct you can have another struct. Okay, so let's skip the demo now, and we'll have the demo at the end of the video. So here an example. Okay, so we have a struct and then student record, and remember here I didn't use typedef, right? So every time I have to declare a variable, I have to write these two, both of them. Okay, and then inside this struct I have 4 members, which is name, ID, department, and then gender. If I want to declare variables, I have to use these two, right? So this is why here you have a struct and then a student record, and this is the first variable, this is the second variable. Once you write the variables, okay, you are now reserving in the memory this size, a string, an ID, an ent, which is ID, a char, which is department, which is another string, and then char gender, right? So you are going to reserve them for student 1, which is here, and student 2. So again, when you are defining the struct itself, you are not reserving anything in the memory. But once you are writing a struct and then the struct identifier, and then after that student 1, student 2, you are reserving in the memory the space for this struct, and again for the same struct but for another variable. So here is an example while I'm just initializing the first struct, which is student1. So the student name I have Chen Tai, and then student ID 1235, and then string copy student department SE, and then student1, the gender is M. Okay, and then after that I will have student2 equals to student1. Once you are saying a struct equal to a struct, which both of them are coming from the same struct, so you're having the same size, it will take every information in the first struct and copy it to the second one. Okay, then now let's look at structs with functions and how we deal actually structs with functions. Before we saw that we can deal a lot with functions if I'm just having a variable, right? Sending it as many variables as I can send to the function, but finally I can return one value, right? And then when we dealt with pointers, we found that, hey, we can send as many variables to a function, and then finally we can't say return, but we are updating in the memory as much variable or as many variables as we need, right? Now, when we are dealing with the structs, you can send a struct to a function and play with any member of the struct inside the function, and finally you can return back the structs. This means that you can return more than one value, right? And this is an advantage of using structs. Okay, so here's an example. So here we have structs with functions, and we are having an example of like representing an image. So let's say this is an image which is having 4 pixels, 4 by 4 pixels. Okay, and as you know, each pixel is identified by RGB, which is red, green, and blue. Okay, so in this case, I will have a struct which is called pixel. And inside the struct, I will have 3 members, which is RGB, right? So as you can see here, I have the definition of my struct, okay, which is having inside it unsigned char, red unsigned char, green unsigned char, blue, and that, like, you can put unsigned or take it away. That's totally fine, and write just char. Both are 100% right, okay? And then after that, I will start with typedef, struct, pixel, and then having the 3 members, and finally having the new type, right? Again, compare this with int Muhammad, right? So now I have a new type which is related to the pixel, okay? And then the next step, I will have declaration of my first variable. And remember, since this is before the main function and before declaring any function, this is a global variable, okay? So we have here global variable. And then I have here a declaration for a function, void print pixel, and then pixel type M, okay? So pixel type, remember, this is the same one I'm getting from typedef. And here we are having a customized function to print your struct. Why? Because regularly the struct is a user-defined variables, right, or members. So this is why you can't use printf to print a struct. You have to print your own, or having your own function to print a struct. Okay, so every time you are dealing with structs, if you want to print, you have to have your own printf function for structs. Okay, and then starting the main function, having another declaration. And remember here, since I use typedef, I'm using directly pixel type, pixel2, and then pixel type, my pixel 16. What the meaning of that? The meaning of that, I'm having here an array of structs, right? So if you want to represent this, you will find that you will have here, this is 0, and this is and this is 15, okay? And inside each one you will find that you will have 3 pixels, right? Which is the green, red, green, and blue, okay? So here I have an array, and now let's try to see how to initialize each one of them. So starting here, initializing pixel1, okay? So here pixel1.red, if you remember, if I want to assign or get a value from the member, I have to write the name of the struct variable and then dot and then the member, right? So here I have pixel1 dot red equals to 23, pixel1 dot blue equals to 78, pixel1 dot green equals to 100, and finally printing it. And remember, when you are printing, you are just sending the name of the struct to the function. Okay, so here name of struct. Okay, and then after that I will say pixel2 equals to pixel1. What will happen here? Copy everything inside pixel1 and put it to pixel2. Okay, so I'm expecting here whatever will be printed will exactly be the same printed from pixel1, right? And then after that, initializing the array. So how to initialize the array, each element in the array, as you can see here, starting with pixel, my pixel, 0. This is the first element in the array. And then inside it, I have a member, right? If you remember, this is my array, and this is 0, right? And here I have the red, and then the green, and then the blue. The same thing here, right? The same thing here. This is 1, this is 2, and so on. So here I'm just initializing the first one, okay? And again, when you are sending to the function, you are sending the first element in the array of structs, okay? Which here is called myPixel0. The last thing actually is the function itself, right? Which is going to print. So the function is very simple. Here, as you can see, it's a printf, okay? And then you have to work with each member, right? Here, here. And the variable itself is m.red, m.blue, m.green. As you can see here, what is m? M is the struct, which is coming to the function, right? So here you are calling here, for example, the first call, where is it? Print. Let's take this one. Okay, so you will find that you're sending pixel1, right? So pixel1 will replace m here, and then you will have pixel1.red, pixel1.blue, pixel1.green, and all of them will be printed, and finally you will get the print for this function. Okay, so the last thing we are going to do now is having a demo. Okay, so here it's saying write a program using structs to group the following information in one struct variable, then print these information, then use a function to print the struct. And as you can see here, book title, book author, and then book subject, and then finally ID. So let's go to see this program. Just based on the time, I'm just showing the program directly. I'm not writing it. So if you look here, I started with typedef, right? And having the new type now, which is called book type. So every time you want to have a variable, struct variable based on this members or these members, you will just use book type and then the name of the variable, right? And then here, I'm going to have my customized print function, right? So here I have print book, and then book type m, and then in the main function I'm having here first struct variable, right? And then here second struct variable, okay? And then after that I will have string copy book1.title, C programming, string copy book1.author, Muhammad Salim, and then string copy book1.subject, C tutorial, and finally book.bookid, because these are all the members, right? So I'm just initializing the members here. So book.bookid equals to this number, okay? And finally writing here book1 equals, or book2 equals to book1. So I will copy all the information from book1, I will put it in the struct which is called book2, right? And finally sending to the print function book1, sending to the print function book2. So from here I'm expecting that the same thing printed from book1 will be printed for book2, right? So now let's see the function. How we can write the function? It's a very simple printf, right? So printf book title and then m.title. Again, this is m, right? And you can write it whatever you want. Because it will capture the information coming from the function call. And then the second thing here, m.author, m.subject, and finally m.bookid. Okay, and when running this program, you will find the output here. So here I just run my program, and you will find that it printed here the information and printed it again, because the first one is coming from the call for the print function for book 1, and the second one is coming from the call of the function, a print function for book 2. So thanks very much for watching this video, and see you in the next video related to structs.